My apartment sold for $256,000, and 40 minutes later, a bank officer whispered 3 words that made my blood run cold. Come here alone. My name is Lena, and 48 hours ago I walked out of a bank branch holding a folder that felt heavier than the money inside. The warning stuck to my ribs. Do not bring anyone with you, and under no circumstances should your relatives know about this. I had just finalized the sale of my condo. $256,000, clean and confirmed, meant to be my escape route. Instead, I felt like I had accidentally opened a door that was never supposed to exist. My family had a different version. They called it a collective sacrifice. My mom framed it as the wise thing to do. My older brother Derek labeled it temporary assistance. My younger sister Chloe wept actual tears when I hesitated, like I was stealing from them just by thinking twice. So I signed. Not because I believed in it, but because saying no in my household always came with a price I wasn't willing to pay again. I didn't sign because I wanted to. I signed because I was tired of paying the price for saying no. I grew up in a house that looked warm from the outside. Sunday roasts, birthday candles, framed smiles. But inside, the rules were different. Derek got second chances. Chloe got protection. And me? I got responsibility. I learned early how to be useful. Paid my own tuition. Bought my own car. Moved out at 22 and never asked for a dime again. Yet somehow, no matter how far I ran, I remained the first number they dialed when things cracked open. This time was worse. Because this time, the bank showed me something my family never had. A mirror. The call came the morning after the cash cleared. I stood in my kitchen, coffee scalding my tongue, staring at the ghost-shaped ring on the floor where my dining table used to sit. Clean break, I kept telling myself. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Miss Turner. A flat, professional voice. This is Agent Wells from Metro Credit Union. We need you to come in today. There's an irregularity connected to your new balance. My throat tightened. What kind of irregularity? A pause. Paper shuffling. Not something I can explain on an open line. But I strongly suggest you do not arrive by yourself. The air in my kitchen changed. And Miss Turner, he added, voice dipping lower, please avoid informing any third parties, especially those tied to the recent transaction. Those tied to the recent transaction. My family. I hung up and stood frozen. Then I opened my banking app. The balance glared back, $256,000. Exactly where it belonged. But discrepancy didn't match the number I saw. My first instinct was to call my mom. That old reflex, share everything, let her interpret reality, let her decide how I should feel. I didn't. For the first time in my life, I kept my mouth shut. Instead, I called someone else. Jake. He answered on the first ring. Lena, you sound strange. I'm not okay, I said, but I need you to drive me to the bank. He didn't ask a single question. Text me the address. I'm on my way. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and the closing folder. A voice in my head whispered that I was about to learn exactly what I'd signed away. The credit union looked boring, beige carpet, fake plants, the faint industrial smell of old coffee. Everything controlled, everything safe, until it isn't. Jake met me in the parking lot, leaning against his truck, arms crossed, jaw tight. He took one look at my face and straightened. What's going on? I don't know yet, I said. That's the terrifying part. We walked in together. Agent Wells waited in a side office. 40s, sharp posture, the kind of guy who weighs every syllable. He stood as we entered, shook Jake's hand, then mine. Miss Turner, thank you for coming. He closed the door, The click echoed like a gunshot. Before we proceed, he said, sitting down, I need to confirm, no one else knows about this meeting? I shook my head. No one. Good. He slid a thick folder across the desk, color-coded tabs, official stamps. Yesterday you received a wire transfer of $256,000 from your property sale. That part is correct. I know. What you don't know, he continued, is that within 43 minutes of that deposit, a secondary authorization request was initiated. I frowned. Authorization for what? He turned the folder, tapping a page. A transfer. The full amount. The room went silent. I didn't authorize anything, I said. I'm aware, he replied calmly. That's why you're here. Jake leaned forward. Where was it going? Wells didn't answer immediately. He opened another tab and slid the paper toward me. Before I tell you, he said, you need to identify the signature on this request. I looked down. My chest seized. It wasn't my signature. But I knew exactly whose it was. My mother's. The same loop in the letter M. The same sharp tail on her last name. I'd seen it 1,000 times, on permission slips, birthday checks, forms she signed without even glancing down. For 3 seconds, I couldn't breathe. That's impossible, I whispered. But it came out weak. Wells didn't blink. The authorization included a signed release form, digital confirmation, and secondary contact verification. Jake frowned. Secondary contact? Wells nodded and flipped a page. Your account lists a family-linked emergency contact. Added 7 months ago. I blinked. I never added anyone. He looked at me steadily. It was added in person. With ID. My stomach dropped. I didn't need to ask who. Derek. He was the only one who'd ever insisted on helping me organize my finances. The only one who'd come with me to refinance a small loan last year. The only one who said, you should always have backup in case something happens. I thought he meant safety. He meant access. When was the transfer scheduled? I asked. Wells checked the file. It was flagged before completion. That's why it didn't go through. Flagged why? This time he hesitated. Because the receiving account triggered multiple internal alerts. Jake leaned in. What kind of alerts? Wells met my eyes. Accounts under active investigation. Suspected shell activity. Potential fraud links. The word hung there. Fraud. I sat back slowly. The room tilted. My family hadn't just expected my money. They had already tried to take it. And worse, they were about to send it somewhere they couldn't explain. They didn't ask for my help. They planned to take everything. For a long moment, no one spoke. I stared at the paper, hoping it would rearrange itself into something harmless. A clerical error. A misunderstanding. It didn't. Can you show me where it was going? I asked. Wells turned the page slowly, like he was giving me time to change my mind. I can. But once you see it, you'll understand why I told you not to come alone. He slid the document across the desk. Recipient, Summit Equity Group. I frowned. That means nothing to me. It shouldn't, he said. It's a shell company. Jake exhaled. Registered where? Delaware. But the operating flag's tied to multiple frozen accounts across 4 states. Cold settled into my chest. This wasn't a transfer, Wells continued. This was an extraction. Extraction. Like I was something to be drained dry. Who initiated it? My voice came out flat. The request originated from your account, he said carefully. But the authorization chain includes the secondary contact, Derek Hayes. There it was, out loud. Real. Jake sat back, jaw tight. So your brother tried to move the entire amount into a flagged shell account within an hour of the deposit? Yes. And if it hadn't been flagged? Wells didn't hesitate. You would have lost everything. Silence pressed down. I thought about my mother crying, my sister begging, Derek telling me this was for the family, They hadn't asked for help. They had planned to steal it. I looked down at my hands. Steady. Stronger than I felt. What happens now? I asked. Wells closed the file. That depends on whether you want this to remain a family matter or become something else. I didn't answer right away. Family matter. The words sat there like they still meant something. 2 days ago, I might have chosen silence. I might have gone home, called my mother, let her reframe it into something softer, something forgivable. That's how it always worked. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was paperwork. Signatures. Timing. Intent. Jake shifted beside me. What are the options? Wells folded his hands. We've frozen the transaction and secured your account, but an internal report has already been generated. If escalated, it becomes a formal investigation. Against Derek? I asked. And anyone connected to the authorization chain, he said, including your mother if her signature was knowingly used. I closed my eyes for a second. I pictured our dining table. Sunday dinners. The way my mother passed plates like nothing was ever wrong. The way Derek talked over everyone, confident, certain. The way I learned to stay quiet to keep the peace. That version of us didn't exist anymore. Maybe it never had. I opened my eyes. What if I do nothing? Wells didn't soften it. Then we document it as a prevented irregularity. No charges. No investigation. They walk away. Just like that? Just like that. Jake looked at me carefully. Lena, I knew what he was asking. Not about the money. About the line. The one I had never crossed. I took a slow breath. For years, I said quietly, they decided what I should accept. I looked at Wells. Not this time. He nodded once. Then I'll proceed accordingly. And just like that, it stopped being a family problem and became something they couldn't control. I didn't tell them that day. Not my mother. Not Derek. Not Chloe. I went home, sat in the quiet of my half-empty living room, and let the reality settle in without anyone else's voice distorting it. By evening, the first call came. Derek. I watched his name light up my screen and let it ring. Then again. Then a third time. Finally, a text, hey, just checking. Did the transfer go through on your end? I stared at it longer than I should have. Not are you okay, not did everything go smoothly, just the money. I typed back, yes. Everything is exactly where it should be. 3 dots appeared instantly. Disappeared. Came back. Good. We should move fast. Timing matters. I almost laughed. Timing matters to him. Of course it did, because somewhere in his plan, there was a window he didn't know had already slammed shut. The next morning, my mother called. Her voice was softer than usual. Careful. Sweetheart. Have you heard anything from the bank? There it was, not a question, a probe. I went in yesterday, I said. A pause. Too quick. Oh, why would you do that? I had a call. They said there was something I needed to review. Another pause. Longer this time. Well, she said slowly, you know how banks are. They overcomplicate things. That's why it's better to handle these matters as a family. I leaned back against the wall. Handle it as a family. Meaning quietly. Meaning without records. Meaning without consequences. I agree, I said calmly. She exhaled, relieved. I'm glad you understand. I'll be handling it, I added. Just not the way you expect. Silence. Real silence. For the first time in my life, she didn't know what I meant. And that was exactly where I needed her to be. The investigation moved faster than I thought possible. Within a week, Derek stopped calling. Not gradually, completely. His number went dark. My mother's texts became shorter, more careful, like every word had to pass through a filter before reaching me. Chloe didn't reach out at all. I didn't chase any of them. Wells kept me updated. Quiet emails. Neutral language. Accounts reviewed. Authorization trail confirmed. External agencies notified. Clean, precise, final. One afternoon, he called instead. They brought him in this morning, he said. Your brother. I stood by the window watching the street below like it had anything to do with me, and my mother, not charged. But her involvement is documented. I thanked him and ended the call. No victory, no relief, just a strange, cold clarity. That night, I drove past my old building, the one I had sold for $256,000. The windows were dark. Someone else's life would start there soon. Mine already had. I didn't lose anything. I just finally saw what I had been holding on to. I didn't lose anything. I just finally saw what I'd been holding on to. The next morning, I changed my account access, removed every secondary contact, locked everything down under my name, only mine. Because some lessons don't come with apologies. They come with paperwork. And signatures you'll never ignore again. If this story hit home, hit like and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more deep dives into trust, betrayal, and the cost of saying yes too long.